The crowd whispered as a quiet young man stepped onto the PGT stage, barefoot, holding only a weathered guitar. When Simon asked his name, he simply said, "Daniel." From Manila, no one knew that the song he was about to sing was written by a man the world once called a legend, his father. And before the night ended, that secret would bring Simon Cowell to tears. Rain fell gently over the narrow streets of Quezon City, glistening against puddles and flickering neon lights. Amid the evening chaos, the honking cars, vendors shouting, and chatter of strangers stood a young man with nothing but a borrowed guitar and a voice that could stop time. His name was Eli Aguilar. Most who passed by barely noticed him. To them, he was just another street performer, barefoot, with tattered jeans and a soft, haunting smile. But those who truly listened, they felt something different. His voice wasn't just music, it was pain, hope, and memory woven together like a forgotten prayer. Each night, Eli sang the same song, a tune so soulful, it echoed through the rain like a ghost from another era. The song was Anak, the timeless anthem written decades ago by Freddie Aguilar, the man the world knew as a legend, and the man Eli only knew through a faded photograph tucked in his pocket. Eli had never met his father. His mother used to whisper his name when she thought he was asleep, her eyes filled with a mix of love and regret. He was a man who sang to the world, she would say, but maybe the world needed him more than we did. When she passed away, all Eli had left was her memory and that one photograph of a young Freddie holding a guitar, smiling beneath the same Filipino sun that now shone on his son. Music became Eli's only way to speak to him. Every note he sang was a question. Do you know I exist? Would you be proud of me? One night, as the rain fell harder, a tourist from London stopped to film Eli's performance. The man stood silently, moved by the rawness in Eli's trembling voice. He uploaded the video to social media with the caption, "This boy sings like he's carrying the weight of the world." By morning, the clip had gone viral. Millions of people watched in disbelief, not because of the song, but because of the uncanny resemblance between the young singer and Freddie Aguilar himself. Comment after comment filled the feed. "He looks like Freddie's son. The voice, it's identical. Someone get this boy on PG." But Eli didn't care about fame. All he ever wanted was for his voice to reach the man who gave him life, the man he'd never known. And soon, it would, because halfway across the world, in a quiet room filled with golden records and memories of a long career, Freddie Aguilar himself was scrolling through his phone when he saw that same viral video. He froze. The boy on the screen had his eyes, his voice, his soul. For the first time in years, Freddie Aguilar felt tears run down his face. He whispered softly, "My son." And that's where the miracle began. Eli could hardly believe what was happening. Just a week ago, he was singing on the same street corner, hoping to earn a few pesos for dinner. Now, he stood outside a gleaming studio building, with a sign that read "Pilipinas Got Talent, Auditions Today." The producers had seen his viral video and reached out. At first, he thought it was a prank. But when a woman from the network showed up at his street corner with a contract and a ticket, his heart nearly stopped. He didn't have fancy clothes or a team to prepare him. His old guitar was cracked, and his shoes were falling apart. But Eli didn't care. He wasn't coming here for fame or money. He was coming to sing his truth. Still, as he waited backstage, nerves began to take over. Around him were other contestants, dancers in sparkling costumes, singers with perfect hair and expensive microphones. He stood out like a shadow among stars. A few people whispered, others smiled kindly, but most simply ignored him. Then, a gentle tug on his arm made him turn. It was a small boy, maybe 8 or 9, holding a handmade sign that said, "You can do it, Kuja." Eli. Eli knelt down and asked, "How do you know my name?" The boy grinned shyly. "My mama showed me your video. She said your song made her cry. I wanted to see you sing in real life." For the first time that day, Eli smiled. He took off the small bracelet he wore, one that had belonged to his mother, and tied it around the boy's wrist. "Then this is for you, so you'll remember to never stop believing." Okay. When his name was finally called, his legs trembled. The bright lights of the stage hit his face like sunlight after years of darkness. And there, sitting behind the table, were the judges, including Simon Cowell, who had flown in as a special guest for the international edition of PGT. Simon leaned forward, curious. "What's your name, young man?" "Eli Aguilar, sir," he said softly. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Aguilar, any relation to the great Freddie Aguilar?" Eli smiled faintly. "Maybe, sir. I never knew him, but his music taught me how to live." The crowd fell silent. Simon nodded slowly. "Then show us what music taught you." Eli stepped toward the microphone, his fingers brushing the strings of his battered guitar. His heart raced. Every beat felt like his mother's voice whispering, "You're ready." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The first note rang out, soft and trembling, like a confession whispered to heaven. Then the melody grew stronger, raw, powerful, honest. Every word carried a lifetime of longing and love. By the time Eli finished, the audience was on its feet, and somewhere in the crowd, the same little boy wiped away tears, because everyone could feel it. This wasn't just a song. It was a story waiting to be completed. The first note Eli sang seemed to pierce through the noise of the world. It wasn't perfect, not polished like the voices of pop stars, but it was real. It was the kind of sound that came from somewhere deep inside, from places where pain and hope had lived side by side for years. The crowd leaned in, silent. Even the camera operators paused. Simon Cowell, who had been leaning back casually just moments ago, slowly straightened in his chair. Something in that voice, something familiar, pulled at him. Eli's song was one of Freddie Aguilar's classics, Anak, but he had rewritten parts of it, turning it into a personal confession. His voice trembled as he sang the line, "You taught me how to sing, even when life gave me silence." Behind him, a screen projected images of his life, the crowded streets of Manila, the small park where he sang for coins, the faces of strangers who stopped to listen. The audience watched as his story unfolded through music. A boy who had grown up believing his father was just a name in a song, but who still carried that legacy in his heart. Midway through the performance, something extraordinary happened. As the lights dimmed and the final verse began, Eli's voice broke just slightly, but he didn't stop. Tears streamed down his face. The raw emotion in that moment silenced the entire theater. No one dared to breathe. It wasn't about perfection anymore, it was about truth. Simon's eyes softened. For the first time in years, he felt something stir that reminded him why he had ever fallen in love with music. It wasn't fame or record deals, it was the honesty of a soul telling its story. By the final note, Eli's hands were shaking. He bowed his head, whispering a quiet thank you into the microphone. Then, silence. For a few seconds, the audience said nothing. Then, one person stood. Another followed. Within moments, the entire theater erupted into applause. Cheers, whistles, tears. A wave of emotion crashed over the stage. Simon blinked rapidly, trying to keep his composure. "Eli," he finally said, his voice thick, that was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever heard." The other judges nodded, visibly moved. One of them wiped her eyes and said softly, "It felt like your heart was singing to the world." Eli could only smile, his lips trembling. "I didn't come here to win," he said quietly. "I just wanted my father to hear me, wherever he is." The crowd gasped, realizing what he meant. And then Simon pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded across the stage as Eli fell to his knees, crying into his hands. The little boy from earlier cheered from the front row, waving the bracelet Eli had given him. That night, the world didn't just discover a new voice, it rediscovered the power of truth sung from the heart. As the golden confetti drifted to the floor, Eli stood frozen under the lights, tears mixing with gold specks on his face. The audience's roar echoed through the theater, but inside him, there was only silence. A silence filled with disbelief, gratitude, and 1,000 untold memories. When the stage lights dimmed and the show cut to commercial, the judges stepped down to meet him. Simon Cowell, the man known for his brutal honesty and emotionless critiques, was the first to reach him. He placed a hand on Eli's shoulder and said quietly, "There's something in your voice, something I haven't heard in a very long time." Eli looked up, his eyes red but glowing. "It's my father's song," he whispered. "He taught me how to sing, not in person, but through his music." Simon frowned slightly. "Your father?" Eli nodded. "Freddie Aguilar. I never met him. My mother told me he used to play for the people, that his songs made strangers cry, made them feel seen. I grew up with nothing but his voice on old tapes. I didn't know him, but his music was all I had." The crowd, still buzzing from the performance, quieted again as cameras caught every word. There was something magnetic about the moment, raw and unfiltered. Simon took a deep breath, visibly moved. "Freddie Aguilar, one of the greatest storytellers in music," he murmured. "And now, his son, standing right here, carrying that legacy forward." Eli smiled faintly. "He didn't know I existed, but maybe tonight, maybe he'll hear me." There was a long pause. One of the other judges wiped her eyes and said softly, "Eli, you didn't just sing a song tonight, you healed something. For all of us." Then something remarkable happened backstage. A production assistant rushed over, holding a phone. "Simon, you need to see this," she said breathlessly. On the screen was a video call, and on it, an older Filipino man watching the performance replay. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he whispered, "That's my boy." Simon looked stunned. "Is that?" The assistant nodded. "It's Freddie Aguilar himself. He saw the live broadcast." Eli froze, his eyes wide. "My father?" The audience gasped as Simon turned the phone toward Eli. The young man's lips trembled as he reached for the screen, his voice breaking. "Papa." Freddie smiled through tears. "You sang from your soul, Anak. You did what I could never do. You made the world feel again." Eli covered his face, sobbing openly. Simon turned away, visibly emotional. The audience stood again, clapping through their own tears. It wasn't just a reunion, it was a bridge between generations, built through the power of a song. As the camera zoomed out, capturing father and son connected by music and love, Simon whispered what everyone was already thinking. "This isn't just talent, this is destiny." When the episode aired, it wasn't just another viral moment, it became a global phenomenon. Overnight, the video of Eli Aguilar and his emotional reunion with his father Freddie spread across every platform imaginable. Within hours, millions watched, commented, and shared the story of the boy who turned pain into purpose through song. Clips flooded timelines around the world. Eli trembling under the golden confetti. Simon Cowell wiping away a tear. And the heart-stopping moment when Freddie Aguilar's face appeared on the screen. The world wasn't just watching a performance, they were witnessing the miracle of music connecting to souls separated by time, distance, and fate. News outlets from Manila to Los Angeles ran the headline. Freddie Aguilar's long-lost son brings Simon Cowell and the world to tears. But fame wasn't what Eli sought. A week later, he sat quietly outside a small recording studio in Los Angeles, the same battered guitar resting on his lap. It was the guitar he used back in the streets of Davao, the one his mother had saved from being sold when they had nothing. Its strings were worn, its body scarred, but to him, it carried every note of his journey. Freddie walked up behind him, gently resting a hand on his shoulder. It had been only days since they first spoke face to face, yet it already felt like a lifetime of love had been poured into those moments. "I used to dream of this," Freddie said softly. "Not the fame, the connection. Hearing my own son sing, and knowing my music reached him when I couldn't." Eli smiled, eyes glistening. "Your songs taught me how to survive, Papa. But tonight, I want to write one with you." Inside the studio, father and son sat opposite each other. Two guitars, one melody. The song they created wasn't meant to impress, it was meant to heal. The lyrics spoke of forgiveness, of time lost but hearts found, of how love always finds a way home. When they released it, a month later, it wasn't just Filipinos who cried, people everywhere felt its truth. Comments poured in. "This song made me call my father after 10 years. I played this for my son. We cried together. Music like this reminds me why the world still has hope." Simon Cowell, during an interview, said something that stayed with millions. "We look for talent every season. But what Eli gave us wasn't talent, it was truth. And truth, that's the rarest thing you can hear on stage." Months later, Eli returned to the Philippines, performing alongside Freddie in front of thousands. As the final chorus swelled, the crowd raised their lights, stars, in a sea of hope. Freddie looked at his son, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "You've given me back my purpose." Eli smiled, voice trembling as he sang the last line. "Love never leaves, it just waits for the right song to bring it home." And in that moment, 2 generations, 2 hearts, and 1 world sang together. Proof that music doesn't just move people, it mends them.